Today I would like to talk about why narcissistic abuse is so dangerous to its victims. Narcissistic abuse in intimate relationships is the systematic destruction of a partner by another person who is on the far end of the spectrum of narcissistic personality disorder. It is also not uncommon that this type of personality disorder appears in comorbidity with other disorders, listed under the Cluster B of personality disorders in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders, in short DSM-5. Narcissists solely enter relationships for transactional reasons to gain narcissistic supply. This could come in form of attention, housing, money, sex, status, or work opportunities, you name it. They are predatory and parasitic in their approach to other people, and the reason we can define narcissistic abuse is because of its universally recognizable pattern, starting with love bombing or the idealization of a target in the attraction phase, to their devaluation in the commitment stage where most of the abuse occurs, to an often unexpected discard when victims are exhausted of their supply and deemed useless or replaceable to a narcissist. So what makes narcissistic abuse so very dangerous? The first reason why narcissistic abuse is so dangerous is its covert and insidious nature. You don't know what's happening until it's too late. Quite often, narcissistic abuse is being compared to a frog in cold water that doesn't notice when the water is getting too hot and so it dies. Whereas if you throw the frog into hot water right away, it jumps out and survives, which would be equivalent to a narcissist waving all their red flags right in front of you when you first meet, which of course they are not doing. Like everyone else, when you meet a narcissist, they put their best foot forward. However, unlike other people, narcissists show up with a fake persona and mirror back your positive traits to basically make you fall in love with yourself. They seem charming and charismatic and sweep you off your feet in a fantasy whirlwind, which soon turns into a nightmare. Since it's difficult to make out or even prove their covert abuse techniques, which are usually invisible, personalized, and emotionally or psychologically in nature and highly manipulative, victims are often being invalidated or sheerly ignored by the system or the people around them. Even victims themselves may not be aware that they are actively being abused, and they can't put their finger on as to why their overall health and self-worth or their quality of life has been declining for so long. The next reason as to why being involved with a narcissist is so dangerous is the isolation victims of narcissistic abuse will experience. In order to transition their victim from the initial love bombing to the devaluation phase, in which the majority of the abuse occurs, narcissists need to isolate their victims from their support system. Usually this means their close friends, family members, or the community they are a part of. Narcissists will do this in 3 ways. The easiest is to isolate their victims geographically, maybe in a different city, state, or country even. If that's not possible, they use triangulation and either pit the parties involved against each other to cause conflict, or they will charm and seduce them in the same way as their victim before, so that nobody will believe your side of the story. Isolation often leads to a lack of credibility because your voice cannot be heard anymore, and there are no witnesses that can validate your experience. This could even include your network of coworkers at your job. My narcissistic ex-partner, for instance, feigned to have an interest in my profession, and our friendship was supposed to start out as mentorship. He would quickly befriend with all of my coworkers in our industry to be able to control my environment, while having no genuine ambitions to work in our department. Next, victims of narcissistic abuse experience a plethora of manipulation to be shaped and molded to the narcissist's liking and expectations. Their manipulation tools can include gaslighting, blame shifting, triangulation, stonewalling, the silent treatment, financial exploitation. In the end, you don't recognize yourself anymore, as your self-esteem and identity are completely being eroded and replaced with traits and qualities that are only meant to serve and please the narcissist, but that aren't inherently your own. Some victims may adopt certain narcissistic traits even, and it seems like you're the problem in your relationship, as this type of behavior is all you are left knowing in the isolation you are living. Which leads me to my next point. You experience a total loss of identity as you constantly change and conform to keep the peace at home, to the point you don't even recognize yourself anymore when you look into the mirror. And it's an impossible mission to complete, because narcissists are prone to constantly change their needs and expectations without a moment's notice, and shift the goalpost in your relationship as they please. You experience one emotional whiplash after another that leaves you confused, exhausted, and constantly on the edge and alert, forced into survival mode and hypervigilance as you anticipate the narcissist's next move. But they are unpredictable. I often described it as walking on a minefield in the comfort or rather discomfort of my own home. At times they even do something deliberately for their own sadistic amusement, as they enjoy to see you struggle. And in an effort to survive, it becomes your sole responsibility to obsessively protect and cater to the narcissist's well-being. The mere thought of it occupies your mind 24/7, making you lose interest in the things that used to give you joy, such as your hobbies, work or friends, or any other pursuit in life. It can take years for survivors to get out of this enmeshment and reconnect to who they really are at their core as an individual, as well as learning the proper boundaries and other means to protect themselves or their identity. Next, in the cycle of narcissistic abuse, you are forming an addiction to the highs and lows of your relationship and the chemical processes involved. This phenomenon is commonly described as trauma bonding or the Stockholm syndrome, caused by intermittent reinforcement. It's basically the same type of addiction you find among gamblers who are intermittently rewarded at a casino while they are in fact creating losses after losses for themselves. Gamblers always hope to win the jackpot at some point, like victims cling to the hope for improvement and a happily ever after that will, of course, never come. The narcissist's fake promises of change keep them hooked to believe in it, and they will be rewarded with a good time every now and then in which you don't feel all stressed out. It's those exact moments narcissists rely on when they return to hoover and want to pull you back into a relationship with them, always reminding you of the good times you have had together that were few and far between. But it's only getting worse with each rodeo. And the longer you stay, the more of an impact it will have on your mental and physical health. Not only does narcissistic abuse alter the structure of your brain, which inevitably is the cause of complex post-traumatic stress and memory loss, or living in survival mode, but being exposed to the constant stress it creates, it can lead to insomnia, autoimmune diseases, heart attacks, cancer, eating disorders, chemical or hormonal imbalances that cause the addiction to the highs and lows of the cycle you are trapped in and leave you trauma-bonded and attached. While narcissistic abuse is often linked to emotional or psychological abuse, many of them also resort to physical violence over time. I will link another podcast in the description which indicates the early red flags of physical abuse taking place. Many narcissists have hidden sex lives or affairs, and you are at risk of contracting sexually transmitted diseases or even HIV. Survivors describe their experience as if they had been living in a fog. It's not unusual for victims to dissociate during their relationship to simply numb their pain. That's when the brain runs on autopilot and gets into survival mode. This lack of focus often has a negative impact on your work or day-to-day activities. And it's not uncommon for victims of narcissistic abuse to lose their jobs, if not their lives, in an accident. Unfortunately, cognitive dissonance is one of the reasons why victims often stay or return to the narcissist to not have to deal with the agony and the pain of the aftermath of it all, such as depression, anxiety, and panic attacks, flashbacks, and, above all, the shame and guilt involved. But remember, you cannot heal in the same environment that has made you sick. Which leads me to my next point. Some narcissists commit what I call silent murder, not only due to their aforementioned impact on your physical health, but victims are often covertly driven to commit suicide. And narcissists have no qualms about acting like the poor widower afterward. To attract their next empathetic victim, they rush through the same. It's also not uncommon that victims turn into their flying monkeys to do the dirty work for them and commit the murders of others. They don't even have to make their hands dirty, as you become a puppet on the string. I will link a Piers documentary in the description below as an example, in which the partner of a malignant narcissist ended up with a life sentence in prison for murdering his ex-girlfriend who had sued him for abuse. It dawned on her only much later that she was under his spell and being manipulated to commit murder by proxy. And the last reason why narcissistic abuse is so very dangerous is that if narcissists cannot control and affect you the way they want to, they will usually control everyone else around you in the way they see you. Narcissists are prone to running smear campaigns against the people they feel slighted by. Quite often, they also do them preemptively to destroy your reputation before anyone even had a chance to get to know you as a means to isolate you. Smear campaigns help them to acquire their flying monkeys and maintain their own support system. And unfortunately, it's often the first person we listen to whom we would like to believe. Remember that narcissists are highly competitive in all areas of life, and they always have a false image to maintain in front of others. The goal is not only to ruin your name and reputation, but also your credibility, in case you want to hold them accountable. Narcissists leave countless casualties behind during their lifetimes. Many we will never hear from. If you are a survivor of narcissistic abuse listening to this, please feel free to share your experience in the comments section below. My goal for this channel is to create a strong community of survivors who find guidance and validation in each other's experiences, so you won't feel all alone on this journey. Thank you very much for listening. Stay safe and have a great day.